Today, I want to share with y'all a brief monologue that I really like. It's from the contemporary Canadian psychologist and philosopher, Dr. Jordan Peterson, with whom many of you might be familiar. The context here is that he's discussing the necessity of bringing young men, many of whom might be feeling lost or rejected by the culture, back to the church. Now, just to be clear, although Dr. Peterson, he's married to a Catholic, he speaks very extensively on matters of religion. He himself, though, is not Catholic. So I want to share his words with you because I like the idea behind them, not because I necessarily think that they're perfectly theologically accurate. So just, take it with a grain of salt. And afterwards, I'll kind of parse out what I think is a necessary message that he's trying to convey and bring it within the framework of our readings, our gospel reading and our readings for today. So here's what Dr. Peterson says. The Christian church is there to remind people, young men included, and perhaps even first and foremost, that they have a woman to find, a garden to walk in, a family to nurture, an ark to build, a land to conquer, a ladder to heaven to build, and the utter terrible catastrophe of life to face stalwartly in truth, devoted to love and without fear. Invite the young men back. Say literally to those young men, you are welcome here. If no one else wants what you have to offer, we do. We want to call you to the highest purpose of your life. We want your time and your energy and your effort and your will and your goodwill. We want to work with you to make things better, to produce life more abundant for you, for your wife and children, and for your community and your country and the world. And we have our problems in the church. We're more abundant than we should be, and sometimes far too often corrupt, and sometimes deeply so. We're quote unquote outdated, as are all institutions with their roots in the dead but still often wise past. So join us. We'll help fix you up, and you can help fix us up, and together we'll aim up. Really appreciate those words, and I'll tell you why. Today, or this weekend, we celebrate Father's Day, and it's of course, it's a secular holiday. You're not going to find it on the liturgical calendar, right? But I think it is impossible to view the idea of fatherhood apart from a deeply religious context. Fatherhood, after all, is established by God, as is motherhood. While motherhood, both biological and spiritual, is the truest and most authentic expression of femininity, fatherhood, both biological and spiritual, is the truest and most authentic expression of masculinity. Society cannot exist without motherhood and fatherhood. These are the highest vocations of females and males, respectively, because these are where saints are born. That's where saints are born. These are vocations which raise humans to the highest levels of selflessness, sacrifice, and love. They are the very avenues through which the majority of us will be called to most directly imitate Jesus Christ, who was crucified and gave himself up to others, up to us, out of love. And for this reason, both of these vocations, motherhood and fatherhood, are under attack. Now, I'm not going to make this about politics. I'll just say this. Satan, the enemy of humanity, has a vested interest in setting up roadblocks and barricades on the very roads that would otherwise lead so many to sanctity, to sainthood, to heaven. Why is the family unit falling apart in the Western world? Well, because motherhood and fatherhood are under attack. They're being treated as antiquated, self-limiting aspirations, unfit for a modern, so-called enlightened world. Satan has his hand in that, no doubt. Make no mistake. Absolutely by design. But here's the thing, you got to understand this about the way our enemy does his work. Think of motherhood and fatherhood as full-grown trees, okay? These two vocations, full-grown trees reaching up to heaven, vocations pointing to eternity. Now imagine that someone wants to destroy these trees, okay? What would be easier? To go around, maybe with an axe, hacking at full-grown trunks, hoping to fall an entire forest, or to destroy these trees when they're saplings, or better yet, while they're still seeds. Now think of femininity and masculinity as the seeds of motherhood and fatherhood, respectively. When nurtured, when watered and cared for, they reach their fullest potential. And so the devil hates femininity and masculinity, and he has convinced our larger culture to detest both as well. But I think his greatest and most terrible achievements have been in the realm of masculinity, specifically in the way he sparked so much skepticism and wariness about the idea of traditional masculinity, traditional masculine traits and roles. Our culture has unfortunately been led to hate what masculinity is by its nature. And what is masculinity by its nature? Now, of course, not every man is the same, and certainly I'm not saying that, so don't believe I'm saying that. But men do have a certain nature, right? And by their nature, they're protectors and providers. They are emotionally strong and sacrificial. They're humble and courageous. They naturally desire to be leaders and to lead by example, to lead as servants, just as Jesus does. This, though, cannot be allowed. Cannot be allowed because such a seed has the potential to grow into a strong, healthy tree. Such men have the potential to become strong fathers. That would ruin Satan's plan. Strong fathers ruin Satan's plan. Satan needs weak men. He needs weak men. So our culture has been tricked into taking this beautiful seed that God has created, the seed of masculinity, and constraining it, making sure it will never reach its full potential. It can grow, sure, but only according to a certain set of restraints, stunted, warped. If you ever see one of those bonsai trees, right? They are guided this way and that by strings and ropes, never reaching their full size, their full potential, but being constrained. And of course, no fruit is born this way. Now, understandably, so many in our culture are starting to rebel against this. Men are being stunted, they say, smothered, shamed into never achieving their potential. What can we do about this? Something must be done about this. But unfortunately, like so many societal issues, the pendulum tends to swing back and forth so dramatically that all it ever does is slice to shreds all hope of worthy cultural change. What's happening now is that as a reaction to seeing seeds kind of stifled by our culture, many are pushing for really the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Let men be men, they say. Let them be brutal and dominating and ruthless. Let them gnaw on raw meat while they pillage and plunder. Let them have children, not with just one woman, but 2 or 3 or 10 or 20, advancing their lineage far and wide. Alpha males to the extreme. It's a ridiculous hyper overreaction to current cultural trends. It's a caricature of true masculinity. And when the pendulum swings back and forth like this, as it often does in our culture, the devil wins every time. He loves this extreme, he loves that extreme, he wins every time. So what's the answer? The seed of masculinity should not be suppressed, nor should it be allowed to grow without care and without direction into a caricature of itself. Rather, that seed needs to be given a healthy place to grow in a way that it can truly bear fruit. The bottom line, brothers and sisters, is that the Catholic Church, is where that seed is nourished. This is why I love Dr. Peterson's words, so wise for someone who's not even a Christian. The church helps us to look up to look outside of ourselves, to look towards eternal things that are beyond just our everyday concerns and base desires. The church is where we become more like Jesus. We receive his body and blood when we are here, and we learn to be more like him. We learn to love like him. It's in the church that a man learns how to sacrifice. It's in the church that a man learns how to desire and protect what is true, what is good, what is beautiful. It's in the church that a man learns that he exists not for himself, but for God, who made him, desires his friendship. It's in the church where a man becomes who he truly is, who he's truly meant to be, not constrained, not wild, but cared for, nurtured, a father, the one who builds that bridge to heaven for others, the one who sees the good of all as a greater good than what can be obtained for only himself. Jesus today in our gospel, he gives us these great parables. He says the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. It's the tiniest seed. Grows to be an incredible plant. That's masculinity. It's a tiny seed. Grows to a tall tree, strong, stately, reaching upward. Likewise, a father should be. Courageous, virtuous, with eyes towards heaven, hands reaching down to lift others up. And here's something that cannot be understated. Women, these seeds are not nourished without you. These seeds are not nourished without you. There's a reason why we refer to the church, the Catholic Church, as our mother. The church nurtures and guides. We have developed in this time and place a culture of what I think would only be rightly called man-shaming, right? Don't shame men. Don't buy into that. Don't shame men for who they are. Encourage them for what they can be, especially your husbands, your sons, your grandchildren. Help build strong men who value themselves and as a result, value others, especially their wives and their families. Raise young men who will be humble servant leaders. What does the prophet Ezekiel say today? Such a great word for this celebration of Father's Day. He says, "Thus says the Lord, I will tear off a tender shoot from the crests of the cedar. I'll plant it on the top of the highest mountain, and from there it will blossom. It will become majestic. It will bear good fruit." And that's what the world needs, right? Not stunted, constrained trees or wild, unruly trees, but rather majestic trees that grow to their fullest potential through nourishment, through care. And such a tree can only come from cultivating a seed. That's what happens in the church. So invite young men back. Young men in your lives, your children, your grandchildren, the kid down the street, those who have left the church, invite them back. And if you are a young man and you're here, you're already back, great. Commit yourselves further. Commit yourselves even more to what this faith is. Young men have come to see church as something emasculating, as something totally irrelevant to their lives. Not true. Not true. This place should be seen as a training ground for soldiers with a battle to fight, a battle against the forces of evil against whom they contend every day, a battle for the sake of goodness and truth and beauty. This is a place, this church, the Good Shepherd, this church is a place where we work together for the sake of our families, our country, our world. This is a place where we help each other up, and together we look up. Roots set firmly in the Lord, eyes set firmly upon the heavens.